The dialogue.
The dialogue.
The dialogue.
The dialogue.
The dialogue.
The dialogue.
Radio Free 102.3 KJLH.
Good morning. Good morning, Front Page family. I hope you're all well and safe and know that you're so blessed. We're all so blessed to see another morning. I'm your host, Starlett Quarles, in for Dominique DePrima this week. And today, we're continuing our series, Conversation for a Generation, with our discussion, the Black experience at historically Black colleges versus predominantly white institutions, or PWIs. Now, as a UCLA alum, I know all too well the challenges many Black students face on predominantly white campuses. I remember the feelings of isolation and competition when sitting in a classroom with 250 or 300 students that just don't look like you. However, coming from predominantly white public schools all my life, my first choice for college definitely was not UCLA. I actually wanted to go to Spelman, but my father wanted his daughters to stay close to home, so UCLA it was. Thank God for affirmative action. Well, I don't regret my experience or degree from UCLA. In hindsight, I still wish I would have gone to the HBCU of my choice. Because as a young Black woman, I believe my sense of self and culture would have been better nurtured, and I would have had more support and understanding from my professors and career counselors. Instead, as a means of survival on this majority white campus, I was forced to self-segregate in an effort to create my own Black community and support system. I pledged Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I only hung out with other Black students, and I enrolled in a number of African American studies classes. And even today, my professional network consists of predominantly Black people. I ain't complaining, though. With what I know now, if I were to do it all over again, I definitely would have better leveraged the white privilege and access that was sitting next to me. But that was then. How is the Black experience on white campuses today? And are more Black students choosing HBCUs versus attending predominantly white institutions? These are the questions we're going to ask our guest today on our show. The Black experience at HBCUs versus PWIs, or predominantly white institutions. But before we bring them on, we have a PSA I'd like to share from the Tau Beta Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. On Saturday, April 10th at 1 p.m., they'll be hosting a candid virtual conversation on COVID-19 and the Black community in partnership with Advantage Health Now. This is a free event, so if you're interested in registering, please visit tinyurl.com/TBO0410. That's tinyurl.com/TBO0410. Okay, we've invited some fantastic guests today for our show on HBCUs and PWIs versus PWIs. Before the show, I was asking you about if you attended college or not. Mm-hmm. And you said you went to...
I went to LACC.
You went to LACC?
Yeah.
And why didn't you go to a four-year institution?
Like I mentioned off air, basically for me, it was just... I got distracted with life, wanted to make some money, applying for jobs. And I just kind of lost that focus when it came to college. Now, if I could do it all over again, I would definitely, would have kept my focus with college.
Would you have gone to HBCU, or would you have considered an HBCU?
You know what? Basically what I know now with HBCUs, I definitely would have considered an HBCU.
But at the time, you wanted to go to?
Just at the time, I wanted to go to SC. I'm a Trojan fan.
SC?
Yes.
You major in?
Business. Business was my major. So, I definitely wanted to open up my own business, which is why I went to school for business. Mm-hmm. I definitely had aspirations to become my own boss, which I still do to this day. Mm-hmm. But definitely if I would have known about HBCUs then compared to what I know now, I definitely would have considered HBCU for sure.
What about you, Bubba?
After high school, I became an entrepreneur. No, I'm playing. When I was in high school, I was in ROTC. So my goals after high school was going straight to the Marine Corps.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Was college ever?
College was, but when I got into ROTC, it was just kind of, I was going straight to the Marine Corps. Like, that was it. After the Master Gunnery Sergeant Madison, Lieutenant Colonel Hines, they talked to me, and I just was like, yo, this is what I want to do. I want to go to the Marine Corps. That didn't pan out. I did not know that you couldn't go to the military with braces on. You cannot go to any form of boot camp with braces. any branch. So
Were you disappointed?
I was very disappointed. I was because after 3 years of being yelled at in the uniform and the organization, it was what I was used to.
Okay.
So to get out and not have that anymore, it was weird. So for me, I did apply to a couple of colleges. I never thought about HBCUs because I never wanted to leave outside of California. Like I wanted to stay close because I have a lot of elderly people in my family, and I was like, I'm not about to do all this back and forth flying.
Okay.
But I ended up going to West LA for 2 years. Didn't finish. I did get accepted to Cal State LA and Cal State Dominguez. But I just ended up going to West LA for 2 years and went right to the workforce.
And so in hindsight, how would you do it differently?
No.
Or what would you do differently?
Nothing. Honestly, I do regret not going to the Marine Corps.
Okay.
That is my regret, is not going to the service.
And what about your son? Is he thinking about college?
No, my son is thinking about editing videos. Literally, he's 16, and I've had the conversation with him over and over again, and he's just not into school as much as I feel like he should be to go to college. It might be a little too early. He's only in the 10th grade. I mean, to me, it's not too early because that's when I started thinking about it. Whereas my godson, who's in the 11th grade, has already made up his mind. He wants to go to Northridge.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, let's bring on our first two guests to continue this conversation about HBCUs and PWIs. Thank you guys for, sharing your experience.
That was hurtful.
Why was it hurtful?
Painful memories. No, I'm playing.
You're
going to go in the back and cry later.
And you never know. He may still go. And he may get it. I tell students if they don't want to go to a 4-year, they can always get, a certificate or go nurture their talents. So if he's into music, he said he's into videos.
He's into video, like he's YouTube, like he has a YouTube channel, so he edits a lot of his gaming videos and stuff like that, and he's pretty good. And I remember back in the day for us, remember we had DeVry, we had IGT Tech, you had schools like that. They don't have that anymore. You have to go to a college.
Yeah.
Or there's no trade schools like that. Well, there are, but not to the aspects of what he wants to do.
Got it. Up first, we have Dr. Tyrone Howard, who is a professor of education at UCLA, as well as the director of their Black Male Institute. He is also a UC Irvine alum, as well as a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity. Joining him is Dr. Darren Early, who is the director of Loyola Marymount University's Family of Schools, as well as the president of the Bridge Builders Network. He's also a Howard University alum and member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity. So welcome Tyrone Howard and Darren Early to the front page. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing well, Starlett. Brother Tyrone, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for waking up with me this morning and contributing to our series Conversations for a Generation. So Tyrone, I want to start with you because we're both UC grads. What made you choose the UC versus going to an HBCU?
I wish I could sit here and tell you, Starlett, that there was this long, thought-out process, and I weighed both options, but it wasn't. And for me and my family, it wasn't even a conversation, and that's one of the disturbing parts, I think, for many black families, especially here in Southern California. It's you will go somewhere local, a community college, or a UC, or a Cal State, and in hindsight, I wish there was at least a conversation that my parents had sat down and said, let's discuss, let's consider HBCUs. Here are the pros and cons of HBCUs. Here are the pros and cons of a UC. But for me, it was because it was proximity, it was home, it was close, and I think it's pretty much what my parents thought was best for me.
Got it. And Darren, what made you choose to go to an HBCU versus a local PWI?
It's funny that Tyrone would say that because both of my family, both my parents were educators, and they said college was non-negotiable,
right?
But we didn't talk about where. And but I wouldn't say I chose HBCU. I would say Howard kind of chose me.
Okay.
One of my best friends in high school, his name is David Johnson. His stepdad, Johnny B. Carter, he had gone to Howard Law School, and he just told me that I was going. He didn't ask me, but he told me I was going to a Howard alumni kind of recruitment session back then. It was so long ago. We had slide projectors. There was no video and all of that stuff, right?
Okay.
But he told me I was going. He said, "Go home, get dressed. This is where it's going to be. This is the time you're going to be there." I walked into that session, and I was like, "Okay, cool. This is a place that I got to consider as a school." The people, the what they talked about. So Howard chose me.
So, and Tyrone, talk about your experience as a black student on campus. I mean, I know for me, going to predominantly all white schools, I was used to being around white people in an educational space, but very intimidated by the size of the class, the size of the campus, the lack of black people in my classes. So talk about your experience as a black student at UC Irvine.
All of that times 10. So I grew up in Compton. And so for me, going to UC Irvine was culture shock because
very much so.
You walk on this huge campus and you don't see anybody who looks like you. You wonder if you belong. You question if you fit in. We didn't have the term microaggressions around then. At least I didn't know. But you have all kinds of racial microaggressions you encounter from peers, from faculty. You look for black faces. One of my very best friends to this day, we met on the first day of college, econ class, 350 students. You're just hoping in this sea of white and Asian faces that you see somebody who looks like you. I made eye contact with him. He made eye contact with me. And we've been linked ever since because you're just looking for somebody who affirms you, someone who understands you, someone who knows your language, someone who can tell you that you belong. So it's overwhelming, it's intimidating, and it feels quite isolating at times until you create your own type of community that gives you a sense of belonging.
Now, did you go to predominantly all white schools prior to going to college, or did you go to black schools?
Black schools. And so that, to me, that's the other reason started why I wish there had been a conversation with my parents. My parents, like, you're going to college, but understand if you go to one of these institutions, maybe in hindsight they didn't realize that, you go to a place like UCI or UCLA or UC anything, it's going to be very different than your set of experiences in high school,
absolutely,
middle school, and your neighborhood. So, what you don't know, what you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel prepared academically to compete?
So that's another conversation. So, I had always done incredibly well as a student in high school, but I got to UCI, I got my behind kicked because I just wasn't as prepared as I thought I was. And part of what I struggled with was the whole imposter syndrome, right? Okay, am I good enough? Not wanting to ask for help. And I see a lot of the same thing today with black students at UCLA. I mean, you're glad to be there, but you're already struggling with all kind of psychological issues. Do I belong? Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? But then, I was not prepared, even close to being prepared, and I had to really sort of buckle down. I was on academic probation. I was subject to dismissal, and if it wasn't for the fact that I had a couple professors who really pulled me aside and said, "Look, you need to get your act together, brother. You need to get some tutoring. You need to sit down and study different." Because what I didn't realize, Starlett, was that the approaches I used in high school in terms of studying did not work in college. Did not work at UCI. And so I had to dedicate myself, up my game, and do some things differently in college compared to what I did in high school. I wasn't prepared, nowhere close. And that's the sad part for a lot of our high schools today. We're just not giving our students what they need to be able to compete at really rigorous institutions.
And I'm sure for you, Darren, it was a completely different experience transitioning from white schools, predominantly white schools, to HBCU. So talk about your experience as a black student on campus, and what was that transition like?
Yeah, that's funny that you said, because, I grew up in South LA, so, I was surrounded by black folks all the while growing up. But I was going to school during the time of busing, and so I was bused out to Westchester, for elementary school, and out to the Valley for middle school, and then I went back to Westchester for high school. So I was always the one of the few and the onlyest in K-12 education. And then when you talk about putting that same kid in a gifted class, I'm looking around, I'm seeing nobody. I'm seeing one or two of us in these gifted classes, and I'm feeling the pressure of, the pressure of my people on my back at, 7, 8, 9, 13, 15, 17, right? I remember I stopped taking AP classes in high school. I took one in the 10th grade, and I was like, I don't want to be in here because there's nobody in here that I'm connected to. My friends weren't taking AP classes. And so school, I love school for the social aspect, but it was weird. But when I got to Howard, it was kind of like, I guess I would compare it to the Antoine Fisher story. You know how Antoine Fisher, his whole life, he was looking for his family to connect with. When I walked, matter of fact, better than when I walked on that campus, when I drove through the campus in a taxi cab with my dad, and I looked and I just saw a sea of black folks, and I knew it was college, I was like, man, I'm home. I had never experienced anything like this. I had never seen those type of numbers of black folks, of all kinds of different black folks. And then, my experience there was that, as I got to know these folks, I saw the diversity of the diaspora. I saw that, that we weren't all LA dudes with shags and tight jeans and and Jerry curls and bands and whatever we was doing out here, right? It was the first time I ever heard I ever saw, what Run DMC talked about Lee on my leg and sneakers on my feet, right? I saw cats from Philly and DC and New York and from the South. You know, one of my best friends, actually one of my, fraternity brothers, this dude was from the South, from LaGrange, Georgia. I was like, is that even a place, right? Mm-hmm. But Don, he was one of the smartest people that I've ever met. And so the crazy part is that, Tyrone talked about the imposter syndrome and things like that. For me, when I got to Howard, stereotype threat was no longer a thing. I didn't feel like I had to hold the weight of my people on my back, and that all the negative stereotypes about me that were going to be ascribed to me if I didn't do or if I did do. No, for me, I looked around. I was like, Darren, you don't have to be the smartest person in the space. And guess what? You're not even the smartest person in the space. It's a lot of folks around you that you can learn from and grow with and develop. So, yeah, the transition was it was amazing. And I think one of the other things I'll say real quickly is just to see the diversity in terms of our interests. I never knew black people sang opera. I didn't hear about Leontine Price or anything like that growing up in school. And I remember walking past the Fine Arts Building and hearing this amazing voice. And I stood out there for 5 minutes and almost was in tears. I was like, wow, I never knew that we did these kind of things. And so Howard University it was an amazing transition in my life for me.
Academically, did you feel prepared? Because I was like Tyrone. I mean, my first year, I went in undeclared. I thought I wanted to be a doctor. I was on academic probation because they tell you, look to your left, look to your right. That person may not be there. So you kind of go into these white institutions with this sense of competition. Even if it's amongst your peers. So did you feel academically prepared?
I didn't feel unprepared, but one of the things I realized, in high school, I never really excelled, and I told you about my situation. When I got to high school, I was like, let me do good enough to go to college, but I didn't really push myself. When I got there and I saw the folks around me, it was, I just saw how we were tiered as a people, and I saw folks that were grinding. And it was like, Darren, it's time for you to grind. And I remember getting papers back, and the way they would grade our English papers, where they would give us, one of the grades was CUD, and it was content, unity, and description, right? And they talked about, our writing and stuff, right? And I remember, getting my first, 70-somethings on papers and stuff like that. And it wasn't that, I don't even know if I felt like, I'm not prepared to do better. I felt like, dude, you need to do better. You need to do a better job because you're not meeting the standard. And I think that was the other thing is that I was at Howard University. I was at the Mecca, and these folks were there. They weren't playing, man. They came there with business, and they came there with a mindset to get it in. And so that kind of transitioned to me.
Got it. Tyrone, so at UCI, what did you learn about being black and black culture, and how did that enhance your own personal cultural competency?
So, I think what happens is that unity, consciousness, and awareness is formed or is heightened in the face of adversity. So being at a predominantly white institution, you are much more aware of your blackness.
Yes, you are.
In ways that I'd never been aware of before, growing up at Compton. So for me, it was looking for any and everything black people, black events, black dances, the hot link sales that you can, support black,
Did you say the hot link sales?
You said that. Wow.
Man, hot links at UC
Absolutely. And also for me, it was taking black studies courses.
Yes.
I remember it was in my freshman or sophomore year, I took a black studies course and read the autobiography of Malcolm X. Changed my life because it gave me this awareness about, what I was going through on that campus. And it really kind of sort of just makes you gravitate more toward black culture, appreciate black culture. And I also went through a real militant phase. But once you become aware, you're like, okay, it was fight the power. It was public enemy. It was divest from South Africa. It was a whole lot of things where part of what happens, even though your numbers are small, it's tight knit. It's folks who are looking out for each other. It's about community service, going back to places in LA and Compton and doing those kinds of outreach efforts to help, black kids. So I think for me and for many other black students who were at UC Irvine and probably other UCs in general, there's a sense that you are much more aware of your blackness because folks will remind you that you're black. They will tell you that you don't belong. They will question if you're there because of affirmative action. So you feel a sense that I've got to make sure I'm clinging hard to who I am and not being apologetic for that.
Excellent. You're absolutely right. What about you, Darren? I know your cultural competency went out the off the chain when you were at Howard. How did that, empower you? And what did you learn about Black culture that you didn't learn from LAUSD or even from your home?
Well, if you take what I didn't learn and you put it next to what I learned, it's like, it's like the ocean and the sky, totally different. Dr. Alan Cologne, he was the African American Studies professor, and I had him for 2 courses, and eventually he became my fraternity brother. But Dr. Cologne was amazing, what he did is that he made Black history come alive for us. That was the first time I had heard of Carter G. Woodson, first time I read Miseducation as Negro, and it just kind of, and that was like a transformative book, and the one of the pieces of the book that talked about, being that, that helpless liability where you're not accepted in the Black community and you're not accepted in the white community, and you're just like hanging in limbo. And I was like, man, I'm not going to be that dude. I'm going to be the dude that can bridge that gap, but more importantly, I'm going to be that dude that never loses my connection. So being at Howard, I was actually not living, but I got the chance to see living Black excellence. I mean, in terms of the professors I interacted with, the people that came to speak on campus, even my colleagues or my classmates and their families and things like that. And so that was it. But then the other part is just, it was an opportunity to develop agency, because that was the first time in my life where I didn't think about being Black every day. And it's weird, because when I talk to my friends from Nigeria and Cameroon and various places, Black countries, they talk about the fact that, I grew up and I didn't think about being Black every day because everything around me was Black. That was the first time where I could just think about who I was. I could think about, the history of my people. I could think about kind of how to develop, as opposed to, and I think the term was used earlier, these microaggressions and this pressure to kind of, to kind of feel, to kind of fight against the forces outside. And it's funny because I was right before I was in school at the same time that Spike Lee was coming out of school, and I remember him sitting in. I remember it was someplace. I think he was sitting outside the student union, at Howard University, and he was working on or finished She's Gotta Have It. And I was like, man, that's Spike Lee. He's here, right? And then there's other cats that I would see on campus, and I was like, oh, these guys either were coming to Howard because they were interested, or they were, at other Black colleges, and you would see them in different spaces. But yeah, I got a chance to see living Black excellence, and that did take my cultural competency in terms of what I knew and also how I felt. It took it to a whole different level. Last thing is this: I remember asking my mother even recently. I was like, Mom, why didn't you guys, spend any time kind of teaching us about Black history and who we were and our cultural selves? And my mom did a lot of good stuff. My dad did a lot of good stuff. And she said, baby, I didn't know myself. And that was something that I promised that my children would not be in the same situation, that they would, wherever they went to school, wherever they found themselves, that they would have a strong sense of their cultural selves, to go along with a strong sense of their spiritual selves and their personal identity.
You're listening to 102.3 Radio Free KJLH, Compton, Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Inglewood. And before we go to a commercial break, we are going to take some calls. So if you want to ask a question of Tyrone or Darren, the phone lines are now open. Give us a call here at 520-KJLH. That's 520-5554 from any area code. Gentlemen, we are all members of the Divine Nine. For me, I was not raised in a family who was into Greek letter organizations. I learned about Greeks from school days. And when I got to UCLA, I said, I want to do that. And it was part of my self-segregation. It was part of my Black experience. So for you, Tyrone, why did you pledge a fraternity, and how did that enhance your college experience at UCI?
So I'm like you, Starlett. I did not grow up with folks in my family who were part of sororities and fraternities. So I didn't know much about, Greek letter organizations. And for me, I was like you. It was, school days was huge, right? Because it kind of gave you a glimpse into what this life was like, about being in a Greek letter organization. But I also say this, for me, what was critical in that process was men I looked up to on campus, the Black men I looked up to. I noticed that all of them were in Greek letter organizations. They were alphas or they were kappas. And so you start to emulate those individuals who seem like they're taking care of business. You emulate the individuals who seem like they're, going about doing the right thing, ambitious, they have goals. And so for me, that was a big part of it, right? And the idea of, service and leadership and scholarship, all those things appealed to me in terms of, wanting to be a leader. And I happened to really sort of gravitate to one of the brothers who was on campus, Ron Thomas, shout out to him. Ron was an alpha at the time and just really took a real liking to me and talked to me about what alpha was all about. And it completely changed my experience. Once I became a member of Alpha Phi Alpha, there was an expectation that you would lead, that you would set an example, that you would be committed to service, you would be committed to outreach, and you would be really about mentorship. And so for me, it was all about trying to be excellent in my pursuits, trying to help uplift other black people on that campus, trying to serve black people in general, and trying to continue to live up to some of the ideals that so many other men of Alpha Phi Alpha have lived up to.
Mm-hmm. And for you, Darren?
Yeah, and first I got to just say, Dr. Howard, you looked up to the alphas and the kappas, but no Qs. That's kind of, I take that to heart, but that's okay.
we didn't have
Come on, Fred. Come on, Fred.
Hey, it just is what it is. I'll talk to him about that later.
I look up to all black men. Come on, man.
My brother. But the reality is that, you know, for me, I'm an LA guy, and like you, like both of you, I didn't know anything about fraternities and sororities, and I got there, and some of the first people I met, you know, they were talking about, you know, we want to be getting in the freshman dorm, you know, like it's crazy. They'd be, you know, singing the chants from the different organizations, making sure nobody heard them, but they were like, you know, yeah, I'm Big Q, I'm a pledge, I'm a pledge Kappa, I'm a pledge Alpha, whatever. And so I just kind of listened, but then I started watching these guys, right? And I was like, you know, I'm from LA, and you know, I mean, the contrast would be this: after I pledged, my brother and my father were like, "What? You went to college and joined a gang?"
Oh,
you know,
no.
so yeah, they were like, "What is this thing about?" You know, right? But on the front side is I pledged because everybody said pledging was hard. My hard head was like, oh, if it's hard, I want to see how hard it is. Let me see what's going on. And then why did I pledge Omega Psi Phi? Is that when I looked on the yard and I saw all these different brothers doing solid things, I said, who are the guys that I see myself most hanging out with? And those guys were Omegas, and I was like, these guys are more like me, you know. And so it enhanced my college experience. You know, I mean, we just recently had our 35th year, you know, anniversary, right? And so, you know, all of us sans two, it was 20 of us who pledged. All of us sans two were either on the line virtually, or a lot of them got together, you know. And I'm very close to my guys even to this day. And I mean, we're talking about these guys in the frat. I mean, on my line of 20, they're, and I always say this to them, I said, that's the only room that I'll be in with a group of men where I feel intimidated, not in a negative sense, but I mean, we got doctors and lawyers and engineers and federal judges and NFL players and multimillionaires and dentists and all this kind of stuff, right? And these guys are my guys. So the reasons why I pledged look totally different than what I got out of the pledging process. And what it did, it connected me to a group of men that are my brothers, that are once again living black excellence and are very diverse, and it's been a strength to me over the course of my life.
So how has, you know, your college experience helped to prepare you to be a black man in white America?
And well, the funny part is just this, is that I had a lot of folks that told me, you know, well, you know, going out of university, it's not a realistic space, you know, because you're going to be around all these black folks, and that's not how the world is. Well, the reality is just this, is that, one, they fail to realize that we as black folks are extremely diverse. And just because you're in a room with black folks don't mean you're in a room with the same folks. We got a lot of different ideas and experiences, exposure and skills and talents. And so that's one thing. But the second thing is just this: it prepared me via confidence. It prepared me via being able to sit at a table and not question who I am, because and not wonder if I'm prepared or not wonder if I belong, because one, I know I belong. I'm connected to something bigger than me, and so Howard gave me a strong sense of belongingness, literally and figuratively, you know, to a group of folks, but also to a community of black folks, understanding historically what has been done, so then I could see myself in the shoes able to do that. So white America for me was just a space. And then the other part is that, you know, you realize that, man, I don't have to make excuses. I don't have to question my ability to be in this space. I have the confidence that, you know, when I'm sitting in a room with whoever, I could think about or look over my shoulder and know that you just like my buddy so and so, or I was just an experience similar to this, and just because you're white, okay, that's fine. And then the other thing it gave me the responsibility that when I'm at LMU or wherever I may be, and I'm the only black man in the room, to be the only black man in the room, not to feel like I have to be sure that I represent my folks in the space, because that's part of my opportunity and that's my responsibility. And so that's another thing too, that it prepared me with a sense of, okay, Darren, you are in this room. I don't care what the room is. You need to represent, and you need to make sure that you display excellence, that you display confidence, and that you are a good representative of what Black people are. And so that it's been amazing for me.
And Tyrone, what about you? How did you feel prepared as a Black man entering white America once you left UCI?
Yeah, I'm listening to Dr. Early dropping bars.
Dropping bars, you know what I'm saying?
Killing it. So, yeah, for me, Dr. Thomas Parham, president of Cal State University Dominguez Hills, was one of my mentors at UC Irvine. And for me, he was huge, along with the late Dr. Erling Piper Mandy. So for me, seeing Black folks speak truth to power in white spaces was huge. For me, seeing Black folks who had confidence along with competence was huge. For me, seeing Black folks who were unapologetically Black in those spaces, who were not trying to be something that they were not, was huge for me. And it let me know that you can occupy those spaces. You walk in there, with your head held up, your chest out. You let folks know that you have done your homework. You're educated, you're competent, you're prepared. You're able to hold your own with anybody. And seeing those Black folks in those spaces is huge for me as a Black man, knowing that I was not there by accident. I was not there because of some kind of rare coincidence. I was there because I put my time in. I made my sacrifices. I've done the work that was required. But it also let me know that you're going to always have folks who doubt you. And that when those folks doubt you, that should be even further motivation to prove them wrong. It should also let me know that you represent other Black people when you walk into those spaces. So you have to be careful about how you represent yourself, what you say, how you say it, whom you say it to, because all it takes is one of us to not get it right, and all of us suffer because of that, right? And that's just the Black tax that we pay. And I had folks who were very explicit about that Black tax, very explicit about the ways in which we operate, we move in spaces very differently than white folks do. And so for me, it was huge for me because it gave me a sense of what the real world was like, because I've been interacting with folks who didn't look like me all my time at Irvine. So by the time I got ready to go into my career path, I was used to folks kind of questioning you and doubting you, because that was what I had been prepared for in college.
Got it. Well, we got some callers for you guys, and hopefully we can get to a couple of them before we go to our commercial break. Rochelle, hi, welcome, good morning. You're on the front page. You have a comment or question for our guests?
Yeah, I do. I kind of have a comment because I have 3 daughters. One went to Howard, my youngest, and she actually got her master's in social work. My oldest went to TCU, which is an all-white school, pretty much, and she got her degree in psychosocial kinesiology. And then my middle daughter went to Cal State Dominguez. But their experiences were so different, and I understand, like, the one that went to Howard, she's like pro-Black, marching and everything, and the oldest one that went to TCU, she's like, I'm still Black, but, all her friends now are predominantly white. And it's easier for her to get a job, even though my youngest daughter has a master's. It's a little more difficult coming from Howard than it is from TCU. And it's just, the struggle is still there, and I see the difference in all 3 of my daughters. And then my middle daughter going to Cal State Dominguez, it's even harder for her because it's a small school. It's very diverse, but, she had both. And I just think it depends on what you want to do in life, to where your path needs to be. And we need to stop concentrating so much on, is it a Black school or a white school, or, which school is better for you and what you want to do in life.
Very good. Thank you so much for your contribution, Rochelle. Anybody want to respond to Rochelle? Tyrone?
I wouldn't disagree with her. I think that college is about fit, but I do know that even the research points that there's some unique things that happen at historically Black colleges. But I think Tyrone spoke to some things also earlier, is that it's not necessarily just that the fact that you're at the HBCU, but the fact that you see representation and you're connected to those who represent on a regular basis. And I don't know what her daughter's experience was like at the 3 different places, but it is about fit. But one of the things that I've seen that happens to folks who connect at predominantly white institutions and HBCUs is that they find their tribe. They find the folks that they're connected to. They find mentors that are African-American mentors that have similar experiences that can chaperone them through the process. And I think that that's part of Tyrone's story, and that's part of my story, that we found folks that we can connect to, be it peers, those day ones that we met when we were in college, because I have a day one also, and then also through our instructors and professors.
Got it. Okay, we're going to take another caller. Howard, you're on the front page. Good morning. You have a comment or question for our guests?
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. My first comment is I went to Martin Luther King Hospital in the X-ray department for years, and I retired there. And I was around a lot of people came from Howard. They considered King Hospital residency programs out there as Howard West. And I remember one lady, she came there externship, and she trying to decide where to go. All we told her little sister is, hey, come here, we love you. And she came back there, she got her stuff together. Now she's a qualified radiologist. We got to have our institutions for our people to go, especially I see in the medical field here in L.A. They mess up the hospital. Drew School, Charles Jr. is not like it used to be. But we got to have our institutions, so at least where we can practice medicine. And another thing I'd like to comment on, we got to encourage our athletes to go back to black schools. I really feel that they should go back to school, build them up, get the money. They're making all this money for all these big institutions. Look at what's happening now with the NCAA, with UCLA and it's playing Gonzaga, and the whole team is just about black, but what is that money coming to? We need to encourage our athletes to go back to black schools, because you remember back in the day when Grambling was real tough, they had more people in the NFL than anybody else. When Eddie Robertson was coaching and stuff, and that was a predominantly black school. And I like to watch Aspire on Saturday mornings for that reason, because I see black football games, black basketball games. Excuse me. I have people in Birmingham, Alabama, and I've attended what they call the Magic City Classic between Alabama A&M, Alabama State. It's off the hook. I love it. I love it. And it's just real nice to see black people doing those type of things.
Absolutely.
And their unity.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your call. Tyrone, your response to Howard?
No, I appreciate Howard's point. I mean, let's be clear. Our HBCUs are crown jewels of our community. They were the spaces that allow us to be educated when predominantly white institutions would not. Even to this day, we know that most of our black doctors come from HBCUs, most of our black attorneys come from HBCUs, most of our black educators come from HBCUs. So we shouldn't pit this as a black college versus a white college issue. I think Rochelle hit it best, that we need to figure out what's best for our children. One of my sons is a product of Morehouse College, and it was the right fit for him, and he swore by it, whereas my other three went to UC. I think it's all about knowing your children, what their interests are, but I think we just have to make sure as black parents we're at least introducing our children to HBCUs and talking about them not in a less than way, but in a just as equal, if not better than way than we talk about predominantly white institutions.
And what about our black athletes?
Yeah, I mean, that would be huge. I mean, I think part of what happens is that I think, look, Howard said it best. For years, most of our black athletes who were in the NBA, who were in the NFL, came from places like Southern and Grambling and North Carolina A&T, Virginia Union, all these different historically black college universities. I would love to see like just one or two, 5-star, high school athletes decide that they're going to a Howard or a Morehouse or a Hampton, right? And I think it could change the game and really be a spotlight on these institutions that get so overlooked, especially for us here on the West Coast. Maybe it's geography that we're just not as close to it, but I think we need to expose our children. That's the key point. Exposure, exposure, exposure.
Thank you so much for your contributions. Okay, you guys, we're going to take a commercial break. So if you're calling in, we're going to take some more calls later on in the show. But Darren, thank you so much for joining and contributing. How can people get in contact with you?
They can get in touch with me at darren.early@gmail.com, darren.early@lmu.edu. There's no website currently, but just they can get in touch with me through you, Starlett.
And there's going to be a podcast coming, right?
There's a podcast coming, yeah. So, just stay tuned, no doubt. So thank you. And Brother Howard, I appreciate you. I love you, man. Good being with you this morning.
Love you too, bro.
Starlett, keep doing your thing. And tell Mandela I said what's happening.
Absolutely. Tyrone, stay with us. And on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about college preparedness and retention of today's black students with a man who mentored me and many other black students at UCLA. So come back, join me, Starlett Quarles, right here on the front page, 102.3 Radio Free, KJLH. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the front page. If you're just now joining us, I'm your host, Starlett Quarles, and the current time is 5:23, and the weather is 63 degrees, and it's going to be a lovely 73 degrees today. Our conversation, the Black experience at HBCUs versus PWIs. And we still have Dr. Tyrone Howard on the line with us. And I'm going to now bring on my other guest and my mentor from college, Manla Kaise, President and CEO of New World Education, which provides college access, retention, and student leadership programs throughout Southern California. He's also a UCLA alum. Good morning, Manla. Welcome to the front page. Manla, you there? Manla? I hear something. Okay. Tyrone, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. We're having a challenge getting Manla on. But, Manla, you there? Okay. He's not here. So, Tyrone, with your work at UCLA, talk a little bit about what you do with the Black Male Institute.
Yeah, so, this conversation today is really so in line with why there is a need for Black Men Institute, because so many Black students in general come to a place like UCLA and just feel overwhelmed and lost, and, start to question if they should stay there, and oftentimes don't finish. And so the Black Men Institute emerged out of a desire to create a counter space, a space where Black men could see other Black men, talk to other Black men, be mentored by other Black men. Manla has been huge in that space. He's come in and given some of our Black men the opportunity to understand the struggle of Black folks at UCLA for the last several decades. And it's just important to let Black men know that they do belong, help them understand the tools that they need to be able to succeed, have them talk to folks in different career paths and talk about graduate school, talk about, career interests. I just think it's important for them to know that they belong, and that we know the research is that the more students feel connected to a place, the more that they'll do at that place. And for far too long, my concern was I would walk from, this started one end of campus all the way to the other end of campus and not see a Black face.
Right, exactly.
And that's disturbing. And this is a public institution. This is one that our taxpayer dollars support. And to not see enough Black faces there, to me, is deeply, deeply troubling. Though
Has
we
it
have made
changed
progress
since we've been going there? Has the Black student enrollment increased any? And are they international students? Are they U.S.-born students?
Yeah, it's to Darren's point earlier, it's a much more diverse mix of Black folks, and we have had some tremendous folks. I mean, Yolanda Copeland Morgan has been a game changer at UCLA in helping to see our numbers go up in the last decade. Ingrid Johnson has been a huge supporter of getting Black students into UCLA. So we've seen an uptick in the last decade or so, but it's still 4, 5, 6%, not anywhere close to where I think it should be. And then when you look at completion rates, Starlett, that's the other thing. Our completion rates still aren't where they need to be compared to, say, white and Asian students. We completed probably about an 80% rate compared to white and Asian students, about 93, 94%. So we still have to do a better job. But I think the responsibility should not be on what do students need to do better. To me, the question is, what do institutions such as UCLA need to do better to make sure that they support Black students accordingly?
Very good. Yeah, no, I'm going to ask you about that, you and Manla, a little bit later on. Manla, hi, you there?
Yes, how you doing?
Good. There's somewhat of an echo. I don't know, is your radio on?
You have us on speakerphone?
I have you on a microphone.
Oh.
That's why there's an echo.
Oh, okay. What you trying to over there do? What you trying to do over there? You just can't be on the phone like normal people, Manla.
I'm trying to do what I think I know how to do, which is talk on the mic. I forgot how to talk on the phone. I forgot how to talk on the radio.
Clearly. But anyway, Manla, welcome to the front page. So how do you help Black students specifically choose the right college for them, whether they want to go to an HBCU or a PWI?
Well, I think, can you hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Well, I feel a little left out. Let me say that first. I was over here chomping at the bit listening to my good friends Tyrone and Darren. And really, to be honest with you, what I've been able to do is to use my own college experience as a lens through which to look at my work as an educator and how I guide folks through college access. So it really is kind of looking at what kind of an endpoint do students want to achieve and families want to achieve with their children. And as you look backwards from that endpoint, how do you go in?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we think about. So we have a better understanding on the back end of what the college experience can be about when you listen to Dr. Howard and you listen to Darren talk about their experiences. I think we know now, generationally, what an ideal kind of a college experience can look like. So that's how I kind of guide students and parents in terms of what they look for. So the whole thing of culture shock and the campus climate, these are things that we've experienced now. So we can think about how do we look at the college choices that we have, and how do we decide what kind of climate is going to be right for our child? I think Tyrone gave a good example of the different experiences that different children may be looking for when they get to college. So one of the things we look at is the climate. The diverse mix, the staff mix, the programs that are available there, the history and the legacy of a black experience at that school, which may be very rich, of course, if you're at a black college, but even at some of the predominantly white institutions, as they shared their relative experiences, you can see that there can be rich black student experiences at campus that are not historically black colleges. So they're looking for that legacy, that climate, that inclusivity of that campus, as well as the academic reputation of that school, and the financial piece, of course, is always a big deciding factor in terms of whether or not family feels that the campus is affordable for them.
What are your thoughts, Tyrone, on the college climate in consideration of going to an HBCU or a PWI?
Yeah, I think Mala's spot on. I think college climate should be considered, but also I think cost needs to be considered. And I think this is one of the big attractions for some of the historically white institutions, at least here in California. I mean, when you think about the quality of education you're going to receive at a Cal State or a UC, it's to me, it's still a bargain. I mean, yes, it's gone up significantly compared to where we were, decades ago, but I think that the cost matters. But I think Mala makes another good point about you should also think about the end game. What's the goal? And I wish someone had sat down with me and said, okay, where do you want to go when you finish? And that way we can work backwards to make sure you find the best fit for you. Mm-hmm. I make the argument all the time that sometimes we get caught up in names of colleges as opposed to understanding what is it that one college offers compared to the next. Mm-hmm. What majors do they offer compared to the next? How do black students fare at those colleges, compared to other places? And I think there should be a much greater kind of researching that takes place, so that when students do make decisions, they make informed decisions about the kinds of places that they feel like they will be supported. And to me, there's nothing like visiting these places. You can go on the website and you can see all kinds of, pictures of folks at football games, and they make it look a lot more diverse than what it might actually be. But go to a campus and talk to those students and get a firsthand account of how they make sense out of being on that campus. That's the real educative process right there. So I think that, the more research that you do, you help your student make a really informed choice.
Manla, what are some of the major challenges that black students are still facing on college campuses?
Well, especially when you talk about colleges in California, we have a 6% statewide black population, or so the census says. And so that suggests that most of our campuses are going to have, smaller percentages. We're not in the South, we're not in the Midwest, where our populations might be greater. So institutional racism is still the pervasive problem, and it can manifest itself both inside and outside of the classroom. It can manifest itself in social spaces as well as academic spaces, relationships with faculty, relationships with your peers, staff and administrators. So looking for a campus's track record in terms of the kinds of ways that it addresses these issues, because I don't think there's a campus in the country that's not a historically black campus where institutional racism isn't in play. Mm-hmm. And so we have to, educate our families on how to, kind of evaluate these campuses and their track records in terms of how they deal with certain types of racial incidents or experiences that students might have. But that's the pervasive problem. And then, of course, there's the basic problems that happen across all campuses. I've seen it at predominantly white campuses. I've seen it with my students that go to historically black colleges, and that's just the social development. I mean, we're talking about young people who are at a certain age. How are they going to engage their peers? Have they been isolated as young people, and then they're thrown into the college environment and they're on their own, and they have to learn how to deal with people, independently. There's of course, folks are growing, so intimate relationships and relationships with other people that are of a intimate and sexual nature. That's big on the college campuses. Date rape is still a major issue across the college experience, and that can happen at any type of campus where folks are. And I've had students at both types of campuses that have experienced those types of challenges in terms of how folks are treated interpersonally. Gender and sexuality is a rising concern in our society, and that's pervasive across the campuses. So these are the challenges that college students face. They're both academic and social, but I think the overarching one that folks have to kind of be prepared to manage, particularly if they don't go to an HBCU, is the presence of institutional racism.
Tyrone, you have anything else to add?
Yeah, no, the mom was spot on again. The academic issues, the social issues, under the sort of larger framing of institutional racism. There's one other piece I would add to. There are also some financial challenges that we just have to put on the table too, because I see, unfortunately, a lot of black students who incur significant amounts of debt to be able to go to college. And then it pains me to see black students who do not finish their degrees who still have this debt load. And that's happening even at historically black colleges and universities as well. So I think there needs to be a greater focus on financial literacy, black financial literacy on our campuses, so that our students understand how to manage money. I know when I got to UC Irvine, I had no idea how to manage money. I got a financial aid check, and I was ready to spend it as quickly as I could.
Right.
And I think that we need to talk to our students early on about how to manage their finances, how to use work study, how to be. And I'm not saying not to take out loans, but to understand the responsibility that comes with loans. And I think some parents need to consider if they should take out loans. I just think there's a conversation about finances that doesn't happen soon enough that needs to happen.
And so
that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Let me just piggyback on that right quick. Tyrone, the financial piece, I think Tyrone would agree, extends to things like credit and money management and how people use the resources that they have. Because, they throw the credit cards at folks, and folks compile massive amounts of debt in that area as well. And I think the institutional racism and the different factors that I talked about, as Tyrone pointed out, they all culminate around the issue of retention and graduation completion. And that's a major challenge, as Tyrone pointed out, across both predominantly white institutions and black colleges. The whole question of completion is, we still graduate at lower rates than most other communities, whether we're at a predominantly white institution or a black college. The retention and graduation rates remain, a big challenge.
So when it comes to majors, you guys both mentioned in our pre-interview that a lot of black students have increased their interest in entrepreneurship. I want you to respond to that, but also I was talking to Bobo here in the studio earlier, we were talking to him, if you heard him on the air, and he was talking about his son who has absolutely no interest in college at the age of 16, and he wants to be an editor. So what would be your advice to parents like Bobo? Bobo, share a little bit about your son, and what would be your advice to someone like Bobo, who he wants his child to go to college, but he wants to do editing?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, my son is he's into YouTube editing, and he's actually pretty good. He's self-taught. But when I talk to him about college, it's not even a afterthought to him. It's like he doesn't even want to think about it. He's like, "Oh, Dad, I'm still thinking about high school." Yeah, but that's going to be over in about 2.5 years for you. So I need you to start thinking about the future. Don't make mistakes that Daddy made. And he's like, okay. But my son is so nonchalant about everything. I'm not sure if this is just him being 16 or him just really not interested in college.
Yeah, if I could weigh in right there, because I do work with a lot of young people on that front end. I mentioned to Charlotte I had a 4-year project at Inglewood. Tyrone and I actually both worked on that piece, and then a similar one at Crenshaw. But again, working from the end backwards, and I think we do our students a great disservice when we're talking to them about college, because Tyrone and Darren, they shared their stories. I wish I could share my stories about how much fun college was. If you go to a college and you have a good inclusive cultural experience. At UCLA we felt like we had a black college experience within a predominantly white institution.
We really did.
All my HBCU colleagues hate it, but I refer to it HBCUs, you know, my historically black UCLA. That was my experience. So I think the fun, the good time, the social and extracurricular environment. And I know, you know, there are UCLA alums who are in the entertainment industry, they're entrepreneurs. And so what I'm saying to your colleague there, Starlett, what I'm saying to Bobo is that if you can show your child the opportunities to practice editing for free at a college campus. I mean, the things that you can do for free at a college campus. At UCLA, with three signatures, you can start your own organization, and the next thing you know, you're writing proposals and you're using other people's money to do whatever it is you want to do. And so a lot of my peers, because we understood that part of the UCLA game, we all had organizations, we all developed skills, and many of us developed careers while we were there that had some relationship to the majors that we had, but that weren't necessarily directly related to the majors that we had. But I think the college environment is a place where people grow, a place where people get exposed to resources, it's really a platform of resources that students can use to kind of develop their future careers, not just go to pursue a very narrow, scripted path towards a narrow scripted career. So I would really look at the colleges for what kinds of resources are available for whatever your child's interest, and then they may have a major that kind of supplements that career interest as opposed to having a career interest that is supported by their major.
I think with a lot of kids now, speaking to my son about it, is we live in this digital age of TikTok and Instagram. So I know personally some of his friends, he has a friend of his that actually has a nice following on.
And he's making money.
He's making money off of TikTok. So a lot of these kids feel like, I can just edit some videos and I can just make this money. And then you see people like being that he's a gamer, you see people like, what's the gamer guy? Ninja, who are millionaires off of just gaming. So a lot of these kids feel like, I can just sit at home and play video games all day and I'm going to make my money. And I'm like, son, it doesn't work like that. And then I find myself sounding like my father, who used to tell me that all the time as a kid. And then now I grow up and I see all these other kids. It's like, Dad, I was that good. Like, that could have been me. You know what I mean? But
what is your argument for that? Because if you're telling a high school, or if a high school is making millions of dollars, what is their encouragement to actually go to college?
Well, if a kid's making millions of dollars, if they're making it now, there's not a whole lot you can tell them. Just like, top athletes who decide to go pro early, right? I'm going to make millions of dollars, so I'm going to go pro early. But if they're not making it now, again, I think what we are allowing our young people to do is to look at their interests and their pursuits against going to college. And what we're missing at the bottom line is they're trying to avoid going to college. That's the takeaway, right? So how do we look at what is most attractive about college and what will help them? Again, just like a top athlete, a basketball player, for example, they go to college because, okay, I need that 1 year, and that's going to help me with my future career. So I could just sit here and work on my game, or I could, go to Europe if I'm blessed like LaMelo Ball, and then I can go directly pro from there. Or I can use college. I can have a year or two of college under my belt. I can experience the college experience and at the same time prepare to go to my sports career. It's the same way with the type of interest that your son has. If he can see that there is a college experience that he wants to have, then it's a both and, not a either or. And I think that's what you're trying to achieve with young people. And so when I talk to them, when I bring in folks who talk about the experience at college outside of the classroom, and then we talk about how that can also support your career, developing contacts, developing relationships, meeting people who went to that college who are in the industry that you want to go into. Then it's more of an attractive thing, and they're trying to figure out, okay, how can I possibly do both?
Tyrone, well, you talked about black students increase in entrepreneurship and those type of majors.
Yeah, so I admire this generation of young folks who are thinking, why do I need to go into, $30,000-$40,000 worth of debt to come out making, X amount of dollars when I can do this directly at high school? So I love the entrepreneurial spirit that a lot of our young folks have. But I do think there needs to be some caution there. And the caution comes with the very point that Bobo and Manla have raised, that I think we need to talk to our students about this being not an either or, but a both and, right? You can still pursue the entrepreneurial pursuits and also get a college degree. But I also want to recognize this, and it pains me to say this as someone who is pro-education as they come. College is not for everybody. And you got students who say, look, I struggle in high school. Why would I go to college and struggle even more and pay to struggle? And I think that's a fair argument that can be raised that we have to take into consideration. But I think that what's more important for young people to see, they hear us talk all the time. But to me, when you bring young people onto a college campus to actually see other black people, it can be a game changer. So I'm gonna extend a personal invitation to Bobo to bring his son up to UCLA. I'll personally give him the Dr. Howard tour when he comes here, because I think, we for years have brought black students on our college campus. And what pains me, Starlett, is that we used to survey our students, and like 80-90% of black students who live 10, 15 minutes away from USC, UCLA, Cal State LA, Cal State Dominguez have never stepped foot on a college campus. And that to me is inexcusable. Exposure is so critical. When you see something, you increase the likelihood of you being that particular thing. And they can hear from students who have a wide range of interests, students who are still culturally competent, who still have entrepreneurial pursuits. I think we have to help our young people as early as possible seeing what it means to be a college student. I watch other folks in other communities, they start bringing their kids onto that campus when they're 2, 3, 4 years old, and they begin to socialize them, and this is what you are going to do. I think for us, we've got to do something similar so they at least know that this is a strong possibility. We strongly encourage this. And you also, we all know, you can be in college but still have your side hustle. Right. As a matter of fact, most of us had a hustle while we were in college, cutting hair, working on doing something. Right.
That's true.
So the bottom line is, you don't have to give up that entrepreneurial dream just to be in college. And at the end of the day, I think iron sharpens iron. What I think our young people need to understand is that sometimes the very people that you meet on a college campus is the biggest benefit of going to college.
Well, Tyrone, I will definitely be reaching out to you soon.
And I will give him your number.
Please do.
Tyrone, thank you so much for contributing to our conversation. We are going to go to a commercial break, and I know that we're going to lose you right now. Can you tell our audience how they can get in contact with you?
Yeah, you can. I've got a podcast, Office Hours with Howard Allen Noguera and Harper. You can check us out there. You can check me out on Twitter at Tyrone C. Howard. And you can also find me on the UCLA website. So I appreciate you, Starlett. Good talking to you.
Thank you so much, Tyrone. I
appreciate you right now. Trust me, I'm about to get this ball rolling.
Okay, we're going to take a commercial break, and we're going to take some of your calls on our conversation, the Black experience at HBCUs versus PWIs. I got Manla rolling here with me. He's going to answer your questions. So give us a call, 520-KJLH. That's 520-KJLH from any area code. You're listening to The Front Page with me, Starlett Quarles, on 102.3 Radio Free KJLH. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Front Page. I'm your guest host, Starlett Quarles, filling in for Dominique. And our discussion this morning has been the Black experience at HBCUs versus PWIs. And we hope to hear from you. Give us a call here at KJLH, 520-KJLH, 520-KJLH. The phone lines are now open. Manla, you with us still?
Yes. Still here.
You know what, in hindsight, I want to ask you, do you wish you had attended? I mean, I know we had our Black experience at UCLA, and I can honestly say a lot of my Black experience was at your leadership, and you took me and Tamika under your little wing, and you took most of us under your wing. But, UCLA would not, my experience at UCLA would not have been what it was without your leadership. But do you wish you had attended HBCU in hindsight?
No. I wish I could have done both. I would love to have had a Black college experience under my belt, but I don't regret for 1 minute my experience of going to UCLA. I can't really imagine being who I am today outside of that experience. It was so enriching, so developmental for me in terms of my friendships, my relationships, and to be honest with you, my Black identity, who I am. As you know, we at UCLA, we feel like we're as Black as the blackest college student could be anywhere in the country, right? And I had the benefit of engaging folks from through statewide organizations and nationwide organizations. My Black college comrade was Raz Baraka out of Howard University, and East Coast University was Sister Soldier out of Rutgers and folks like that. So I had a chance to engage people who were going to different colleges across the state and across the country, and I never felt like I was lacking anything relative to their experience. I had a great college experience, and what I try to do is help students to kind of have the closest thing to that for themselves, whether they're at a black college or at a predominantly white institution or any of the other. You know, it really is kind of reducing it narrowly to those two types, because colleges are so diverse. Not all black colleges are the same, and certainly among the public colleges, some are more diverse than others. And so predominantly white doesn't always kind of capture it. Like you take UCLA, for example, it's less than 50% white. It's about 38% white in actuality. So, you know, you have to kind of think about, you know, those demographics a little bit differently today.
Okay, we have a caller for you, Manla. El Nubian, you're on the front page. Good morning. You have a comment or question for our guest?
I guess a little story. I ended up going my freshman year to Prairie View. Well, my dad had graduated from Prairie View, and both sides of my family had Prairie View folks going. And my cousin, who was 4 years older than me, she invited me up for homecoming 3 years before I went there. And it was like the Commodores with Lionel Richie. Next year was like Rufus and Chaka Khan. The year after that, it was a group called Maze with Frankie Beverly. And then the year I went there, it was Confunction. And plus, she had these beautiful roommates, these sisters, beautiful sisters. And so that was my reasoning to going. I went there my freshman year, then I came out here, and I finished at Dominguez Hills, which was probably the closest to a HBCU out here that I, you know, was pretty diverse. And so that was my experience. And then my aunts and uncles, when I was a kid, I used to play with their shields. And so, you know, there was those pink and green shields, my aunties, and purple and gold shields. My uncle, he just passed last January. He was a Tuskegee Airman. And so that was my experience. So I was going to school, you know, no matter what. And I grew up a part of my life in West Texas and grew up with some Quarles. I don't know if they're kin to you or not.
Yeah, Quarles is from Texas. I don't know. If not, we were definitely on the same plantation.
All right now. Y'all take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any other callers? We got a couple of calls. Mom, we got some callers coming in, and we'll try to get them. Before we go, we got one caller.
Real quick, right?
Real quick, because we're almost at the end of the hour, but I want you to get to him. Hi, caller, you're on?
Hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
I just wanted to quickly give my input on this HBCU experience. I recommend that anyone send their child to an HBCU, but do not send them there after them experiencing a white college.
Now, why do you recommend that?
Things are more efficient at white colleges, and I implore staff and administrators at HBCUs to check their staff on those inefficiencies, because it's a big difference. It's night and day going from a white college to an HBCU. You have a certain bar, certain expectations, and the lack of the staff at HBCUs are really frustrating and discouraging to students who have a different cultural experience coming in.
Thank you so much for your comment. Real quickly, Mila, respond to her question? Her comment?
I did not hear the question.
She was saying that if you want to encourage your child to go to HBCU, make sure that they go to a white institution first, because they would be better prepared, if I understood you. Yeah,
pretty much she was saying that the white colleges are more efficient at certain things and the staff is better equipped.
Okay. Well, I think, you know, again, that varies from campus to campus. There are non-historically black college campuses that are kind of under-resourced and therefore may have some of those types of challenges, and there are black colleges that are under-resourced, certainly, and have those types of challenges. So, I think you want to just the takeaway is, if you visit the campus, if you get a chance to research the campuses, you'll get a chance to see how they work and how efficient or inefficient they may be. I don't think that breaks narrowly down between predominantly white schools and HBCUs. I think it varies from campus to campus.
Real quickly, Mala, how can people get in contact with you?
NewWorldEd.com is my website. I'm also either Mandla Kaise or New World Ed on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Can reach me on any of those platforms.
Thank you so much, Manla. And thank you, family, for tuning in this morning. I'd like to thank my guests, Darren Early, Tyrone Howard, and Manla Kaise. Join us tomorrow as we conclude our series of Conversations for a Generation with our discussion, caring, and preparing for our aging parents. Right here on the front page with me, Starlett Quarles, signing off as my mama's child and my daddy's baby girl. Until tomorrow.